Video game culture. Video game culture is a worldwide new media subculture formed by video games. As computer and video games have exponentially increased in popularity over time, they have had a significant influence on popular culture. Video game culture has also evolved over time, hand in hand with internet culture and the increasing popularity of mobile games. Many people who play video games identify as gamers, which can mean anything from someone who enjoys games to someone who is passionate about it. As video games become more social with multiplayer and online capability, gamers find themselves in growing social networks. Playing video games can both be entertainment as well as competition, as a new trend known as electronic sports is becoming more widely accepted. Today, video games can be seen in social media, politics, television, film, music and YouTube. Demographics. As of 2016, the average age for a video game player is 31. A number slowly increasing as people who were children playing the first arcade, console and home computer games continue playing now on current systems. The gender distribution of gamers is reaching equilibrium, according to a 2016 study showing that 59% of gamers are male and 41% female. However, research has also shown that women are less likely to self-identify as gamers out of fear of stigmatization. As of 2011, ESA reported that 71% of people aged 6 to 49 in the US played video games, with 55% of gamers playing on their phones or mobile devices. The average age of players across the globe is mid to late 20s and is increasing as older players grow in numbers. One possible reason for the increase in players could be attributed to the growing number of genres that require less of a specific audience. For example, the YE console has widened its audience with games such as YE Sports and YE Fit. Both require more activity from the user and provide more reasons to play, including family competition or exercise. It could also be because people who played video games when they were young are now growing older and still have that interest in video games. Currently, the largest entertainment industry for children is gaming citation needed. According to a 2008 telephone survey with a sample size of 1,102 respondents, 97% of children living in the United States and between the ages of 12 and 17 play video games. LAN gaming. Video games are played in a variety of social ways, which often involve domestic gatherings or even in public places. A popular method of accomplishing this is a LAN, local area network, party, which if hosted at a home involves family and friends, creating a social event for people friendly with each other. LAN parties are often held in large-scale events conducted in public spaces and have a great number of participants who might not usually socialize. The Evercast fan fairs, for instance, provide weekends of socializing and playing at a large gathering, an event of several thousands of dedicated game fans. Terry Flew in his book Games, Technology, Industry, Culture also emphasizes the online gaming communities where players aren't physically located in the same space but still socializing together. This raises the notion of McLuhan's global village, as people are able to transcend their physical limitations and communicate with people possessing a similar interest from all around the world. Shapiro also stresses the possibility of using technology to enhance one's social life, as friendships no longer have to be structured by physical proximity, e.g. neighbors, colleagues. Shapiro states that the net, online gaming communities, gives individuals the opportunity to extend their social network in a novel way, to communicate and share life experiences with people, regardless of where they live, and form online relationships. Thus, such online communities satisfy a genuine need for affiliation with like-minded others. Online gaming. Online gaming has drastically increased the scope and size of video game culture. Online gaming grew out of games on bulletin board systems and on college mainframes from the 1970s and 1980s. MUDs offered multiplayer competition and cooperation, but on a scope more geographically limited than on the internet. The internet allowed gamers from all over the world, not just within one country or state, to play games together with ease. With the advent of cloud gaming, high-performance games can now be played from low-end client systems and even TVs. One of the most groundbreaking titles in the history of online video games is QUAKE Citation Needed, which offered the ability to play with 16 and eventually up to 32 players simultaneously in a 3D world. Gamers quickly began to establish their own organized groups, called clans. Clans established their own identities, their own marketing, their own form of internal organization, and even their own looks. Some clans had friendly or hostile rivalries, and there were often clans who were allied with other clans. Clan interaction took place on both professionally set competition events and during normal casual playing where several members of one clan would play on a public server. Clans would often do their recruiting this way. By noticing the best players on a particular server, they would send invitations for that player to either try out or accept membership in the clan. Gamers of all ages play online games, with the average age being 31 years old. Clan or guild-based play has since become an accepted and expected aspect of multiplayer video games, with several games offering cash prize tournament-style competition to their players. Many clans and guilds also have active fan bases, which, when combined with the tournament aspect, contribute in turning clan-based gaming into a semi-professional sport. Clans also allow players to assist each other in simulated combat and quests in game advancement, as well as providing an online family for friendly socializing. From Quake, online video games grew beyond first-person shooters and has impacted every genre. Real-time strategy, racing games, card games, sports games can all be played online. Online gaming has spread from its initial computer roots to console video games as well. Today, every major video game console available offers degrees of online gaming, some limited by particular titles, some even offer up entire virtual communities. Slang and terminology. As in other cultures, the community has developed a gamut of slang words or phrases that can be used for communication in or outside of games. Due to their growing online nature, modern video game slang overlaps heavily with internet slang, as well as leetspeak, with many words such PWN, as well as noob, being direct carryovers from leetspeak. There are terms to describe video game events, games genres, gamer demographics, strategies, specific events, situations, and more. It is especially common among online games to encourage the use of neologisms for convenience in communication. While most games have specific terms that a dedicated player base use, some of the most prevalent phrases across all communities include abbreviations such as LOL, meaning laughing out loud, as well as noob, which is a derogatory term for a new or unskilled player. Another popular term that stemmed from the video game community is the abbreviation AFK, meaning away from keyboard, to refer to people who are not at the computer or paying attention. Another common abbreviations include GLHF, which stands for good luck, have fun, which is often said at the beginning of a match to show good sportsmanship. Likewise, at the end of a game, GG or GGWP may be said to congratulate the opponent, win or loss, on a good game, well played. While much of video game culture language uses abbreviations for convenience, a lot of jargon is used for cyberbullying. In cases of online games with text or voice chat channels, it is not uncommon for players to blame or insult one another using such jargon. Some additional examples of slang and terminology include wrecked. Slang for wrecked is often used to point out the obvious when a player or entity is destroyed. Less commonly, own, ownage, owned or pwnet is used in a similar fashion. Gaming networks. The shift from console-based or shrink-wrap video games to online games has allowed online games and massively multiplayer online gaming today to develop highly advanced and comprehensive communication networks. With the freedom of the internet's architecture, users can become producers of the technology and shapers of the growing networks. Compared to past eras where consumers had little means of communication with game developers and other communities beyond their geographical location, the internet has created many methods of communication, such as through the online bulletin board website, Reddit. Gamers can often develop sub-communities in game clans and may use third-party VoIP programs to communicate while playing games such as Skype, Ventrilo, TeamSpeak or Discord. These video game communities may have nothing in common or instead designed for dedicated, skilled players, or even clans made for those with shared commonalities, such as personality, ethnicity, heritage, language or gender. Another key component of many video game networks is the connection between the player base and the game developers. Many game developers have outlets either through official website forums or social media, where gamers can communicate with and provide feedback to the game developers. Likewise, these same places become key locations for game developers to communicate with their fans, where often dedicated employees act as liaisons as a bridge between the company and the community. Some of the most advanced networks take place with massively multiplayer online gaming, where servers of tens of thousands can be present simultaneously in the same instance or environment. In major titles such as World of Warcraft and Dota 2, the player base is in the millions. With so many people, many of these communities may develop virtual economies that may use a barter system or currency system. In some games, the interest in the virtual economies may be so great players will spend real money through auction sites like eBay for virtual property and items, commonly known as RMT, real market trading. Some game developers may ban RMT in their games, especially when it interferes with the equity of the game. That being said, other game developers embrace it with one game, Second Life, with its entire focus on the usage of real-life currency for everything in the game world. Since smartphones became commonplace around 2007, mobile video games have seen rapid increases in popularity. The widespread appeal of simple time-killing games, reminiscent of social games such as those found on Facebook, has set the stage for mobile video games to account for almost 35% of video games' total market share by 2017. Because games such as Clash of Clans offer in-game bonuses for referring new players to the game, mobile gamers have turned to social media sites to recruit their friends and family. Some games even offer integrated social media support to provide players with in-game chat or friends, features for communicating and competing with other players. The large number of mobile game players has led to the creation of devoted forums, blogs, and tip sites similar to those committed to console video games. Popular video game publications like Ars Technica and Touch Arcade are even beginning to give significant coverage to mobile games. Social or anti-social technology? There has been much debate among media theorists as to whether video games are an inherently social or anti-social activity. Terry Flew argues that digital games are increasingly social, a trend that works against the mainstream media's portrayal of players as isolated, usually adolescent boys hidden away in darkened bedrooms, failing to engage with the social world. He asserts that games are played in very social and public settings. For example, computers and consoles are often played in living areas of domestic homes where people play with family or friends. David Marshall argues against the rich source of effects-based research, finding that games are deliberating and antisocial forms of behavior. Rather suggesting that the reality of most games is that they are dynamically social, the elaborate social conversations that emerge from playing games online in massive multiplayer formats, MMOG. Exemplifying The Sims Online, he states, has built up entire political and social structures in given communities that provide an elaborate game life for participants. Gamers in these online worlds participate in many-to-many forms of communication and one-to-one correspondence. The games are not only massive, they are also intimate and social. Gosney argues that alternate reality gaming is also inherently social, drawing upon Pierre Levy's, Levy 1998, notion of collective intelligence. He states that the game relied upon an unprecedented level of corroboration and collective intelligence to solve the game. The issue of collective and corroborative team play is essential to ARG, thus are anything but a solitary activity. Hans Jesser further rejects the mainstream media view that video games is an anti-social activity, asserting, there is considerable empirical evidence that Second Life serves mainly to widen the life experience of individuals who have already a rich first life, not as a compensating device for marginal loners. Thus highlighting the fantastic social possibilities of Second Life, as the intangible reward of social belongingness, is of paramount importance. Bray and Konsinski also argue the ability of the technology to enrich their lives, as most millennials report. No difference between friendships developed in the real world versus friendships developed online, and most use the internet to maintain their social networks and plan their social activities. Social implications of video games. The advent of video games gave an innovative media technology that allowed consumers to archive, annotate, appropriate and recirculate media content. Consumers can use this media source as an alternative tool to gain access to information of their interest. The community aspect of video gaming has also had implications for the social interactions and collective behaviors of consumers involved in the activity. Rise of subcultures. Contemporary investigations have found that there is a prevailing social framework in place during gatherings of video game enthusiasts or gamers. Mera, 2008, page 25, suggests that gamers who gather together to play possess a shared language, engage in collective rituals, and are often interested in cultural artifacts, such as video game paraphernalia. Cronin and McCarthy, 2011, have also explored a liminal, hedonic food culture to be present among these socially connected actors. The commensal consumption of energy-dense low-nutrient foods is considered to be appropriated during long stretches of gameplay to contribute to the community and hedonistic aspects of social gaming. In response to the central importance that food plays in the collective enjoyment of social gaming, various websites have been created which allow gamers to rate their favorite foods to accompany play. The presence of rituals, shared discourse, collective action and even a liminal food culture among video game communities gives credence to the concept of these cohorts existing as self-defining sub-units within mainstream culture. However, due to the ephemeral and transient nature of their rituals, and also the possibility of virtual interaction through online participation, these cohorts should be considered postmodern subcultures. Video game communities have social elements beyond physical interaction and have come to a stage where online and offline spaces can be seen as merged rather than separate. MMORPG and identity tourism. Terry Flew, 2005, page 264, suggests that the appeal of the massively multiplayer online role-playing game lie in the idea of escapism and the ability to assume the role of someone or something that is a fantasy in real life. He notes that for some women, they enjoy adopting what they feel to be an image of femininity more acceptable or desirable than their real-world body. This is what he calls identity tourism, a form of hopping from one person to another, for which there usually is a stereotypical discourse associated with the protagonist. This is seen in the case of males who assume the personas of the female gender, and the character's representation of her gender being overly sexualized and/or passive. This tends to perpetuate and accentuate existing stereotypes of women. Nakamura. Ownership. Ownership of video game entities is a major issue in video game culture. On one side, players, especially who played with avatars for several years, have treated the avatars as their own property. On the other hand, publishers claim ownership of all in-game items and characters through the EULA, end-user license agreements. Terry Flew recognized this problem. Intellectual property is much better suited to conventional texts that are fixed or finished, rather than ongoing collaborative creations like games. He also highlights that these issues will only worsen as more interactive games emerging, issues of regulation, ownership, and service will only get more problematic. Violence narrative. Violent content in video games are often a source of criticism, which according to Terry Flew, is related to the subject of moral panic. Terry Flew writes that the effects-based research which gives rise to the computer games cause violence discourse is mostly psychology-based research, influenced particularly after horrific events such as the shooting of schoolchildren at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado in 1999. He says that the assumption behind such research, cause-effect behaviorist models of communication, is a flawed one. Several studies show a correlation between violent content conveyed through media, including videogames, and violent or aggressive behavior, while others, Vastag 2004, consider that the evidence for such conclusions is thin and highly contestable. Fox News reported that Montreal shooting case in Canada was carried out by the criminal Kimveer Gill, who is a player of Super Columbine Massacre, whose narrative attaches with strong violence sense. On the other hand, some people who hold social determinism theory assert technology is neutral, but it is the way that humans manipulate technology which brings about its social impact. Interactive movies. Interactive movies as a computer and video game genre was the result of the multimedia expansion of computers and video game consoles in the mid-1990s, primarily because of the increased capacity offered by the Laserdisc format. Interactive movies started out on arcade machines in 1983, but quickly expanded to computers and video game consoles, such as the Sega CD, the Philips CDI, and the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer. The games are characterized by more emphasis on cinematic sequences, using full-motion video and voice acting. Interactive movie games have been made in a number of genres, including adventure games, rail shooters, and role-playing games. The first interactive movie game was Dragon's Lair, originally released in the arcades in 1983, making it the first game to use a laserdisc and animation by Don Bluth, a man who worked for Disney on features like Robin Hood, The Rescuers, and Pete's Dragon, but later worked for other film companies like United Artists, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and Universal Studios, The Land Before Time. In Dragon's Lair, you control the actions of a daring knight named Dirk to save a princess from an evil dragon, hence the name of the game. Since the dawn of this exact game, more and more companies were influenced by technology used and decided to make their own interactive movie games for arcades and consoles. A more recent interactive movie title is called Bandersnatch. This movie sets you on a plot of a young 80s programmer named Stephen Butler. The movie lets the viewer choose different plot trajectories for the main character questioning reality throughout the way. The birth of the interactive movie genre was studded with unimpressive flops, though the genre later came into its own. At the time, video capture technology was still in its infancy, with short and often grainy and low-quality video segments being the norm for games of any length. Video game and traditional media forms. With the rapid convergence of all media types into a digital form, video games are also beginning to affect and be affected by traditional media forms. In the history, the television engineer Ralph Baer, who conceived the idea of an interactive television while building a television set from scratch, created the first video game. Video games are now also being exploited by pay TV companies, which allow you to simply attach your computer or console to the television cable system, and you can simply download the latest game. Games act in television, with the player choosing to enter the artificial world. The constructed meanings in video games are more influential than those of traditional media forms. The reason is that games interact with the audience in a dialogue of emotion, action, and reaction. The interactivity means this occurs to a depth that is not possible in the traditional media forms. Computer games have developed in parallel to both the video game and the arcade video game. The personal computer and console machines such as the Dreamcast, Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 2 and Xbox offered a new dimension to game playing. The consoles have now largely been replaced by the Xbox 360, and the PlayStation 4, and the personal computer is still a leading gaming machine. Games are the first new computer-based media form to socialize a generation of youth in a way that traditional media forms have in the past. Therefore, the MTV generation has been overtaken by the Nintendo generation. However, some refer to the current generation as the iPod generation. Because they straddle the technologies of television and computers, electronic games are a channel through which we can investigate the various impacts of new media and the technologies of convergence. Interactive engagement between players and digital games. Digital game is a new form of media where users interact and highly engage with. Terry Flew said that unlike lean-back types of media such as television, film and books, digital games place users into a productive relationship. In other words, a player has a relationship where he or she serves to create their own text every time when engaged. Clarification needed. Digital games are normally lacking in narrative. Rather than focusing on its character development or plot, usually, the setting is the important aspect of the narrative. For example, despite the fact that games such as Tetris and Pong lack a plot or characters, they manage to keep players engaged for hours. Furthermore, digital games place players into a position where they have power to control. Players have power because they are the actor in the game. Again, Flew wrote that the engagement comes because the player is the performer, and the game evaluates the performance and adapts to it. Emergent games are becoming a popular type of video games as they offer environments and sets of rules where players' story can branch in various unexpected directions, depending on the player's own decisions. Players as users of these new forms of media not only ingest narrative but also can more freely interact and engage in ways where they can actually create their own text. 2005. The time spent playing games varies by age group and by country, with estimates putting the average between 6 and 22 hours per week.